Was Maxwell and Epstein secretly working for the Israeli mob to blackmail American politicians? Oh, we're going down the wormhole today.
It's the Mega Man, and nah, that doesn't stand for hate. We're just saying it's time for education to be great.
Hello everyone, this is Make Education Great Again. I'm your host Chris Morris. Today's topic is huge. Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein. Were they secretly an Israeli mob blackmailing operation against American politicians? This is going to sound conspiracy theory, but I have gone down the wormhole the last 24 hours, and let me tell you, there's some compelling evidence to suggest that this is actually a lot deeper than it seems. The mainstream media and even Western governments are going to give you a surface-level insight into the news. So I could spend today talking about the latest day 2 of the trial, and which is all well and good. I mean, it's not really giving you the intel that you need if I just cover that topic alone. You heard some witnesses talk about, hey, these people are messed up, they were having orgies and all this stuff. I could report on that, but that's not really why I feel like y'all watch this show. You want to get the news that the mainstream is not covering. So we're going down the wormhole. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a lot to unpack, but let me just start here. Remember a name. His name is Wexner. This man is supposedly a member or a huge boss in the Jewish, I didn't say Italian, Jewish mafia, who apparently is the main reason who was financing Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein had buildings, he had artwork, he had many homes, apartments that essentially he got almost basically for free from this billionaire, very rich Jewish mafia man by the name of Wexner. Hooked him up because, get this, the whole reason why Epstein, this is just purportedly what is being what is believed, and I'm going to give y'all some evidence as to why that is. Supposedly the whole reason Epstein was doing this operation where he had pedophilia and had underage girls and all this stuff, they had cameras in these rooms, they had cameras in the homes, they had all this stuff. You'd have politicians, Bill Clinton, celebrities, you name it, and they get evidence of them doing these illegal things that are sick to the American public, and therefore they're able to blackmail these politicians to do what they want to do. It's a weird world we live in. I know there's a lot I just said there, but let's go ahead and get into an article to kind of give you some context. Remember, things are a lot darker in reality than what we're being told on the mainstream media. You have mob bosses, you have people who are controlling things from behind the scenes all the time, and I'm going to give you a little history lesson, then we'll bring it into where we are with this with today's trial with Ghislaine Maxwell. So let's go ahead and get into this first article, okay? So right here, it's called Hidden in Plain Sight. That's a very popular title, but let's get into this. It's called Hidden in Plain Sight. I was able to find this. It says, the shocking origins of the Jeffrey Epstein case. All right. So let me just scroll down here. Epstein is only the latest incarnation, they say, of a much older, more extensive and sophisticated operation that offers a frightening window into how deeply tied the U.S. government is to the modern-day equivalents of organized crime. It's written by Whitney Webb. I have a video clip from an interview that she has with a young lady who essentially was associated with Epstein and then got kidnapped, and it gets crazy, y'all. So we're going to just throw this out there for you guys to hear so that we can think. Do not take everything I say today as gospel, as definite truth. I feel like I'm probably going to give you some info that's true and then some that's not, and we have to weigh that out, but at least I'm going to say what the news is and then let you guys think, okay? That's kind of how we're going to do this. So as I scroll down, let's go ahead and get into this article. This was written in 2019, like I said, by Whitney Webb. Check this out. It says, despite the sweetheart deal and having seemingly evaded justice, billionaire sex offender Jeffrey Epstein was arrested earlier in the month, this is back in 19, on federal charges of sex trafficking minors. Y'all know this. Epstein's arrest has again brought increased media attention to many of his famous friends and the current president, yada yada. Many questions have since been asked about how much his famous friends knew of the activities and exactly what Epstein was up to. The latter arguably received the most attention after it was reported that Alex Acosta arranged Epstein's sweetheart deal in 2008 and recently resigned as Donald Trump's labor secretary following Epstein's arrest. But anyway, scrolling a little bit lower here, it says other investigations have made it increasingly clear that Epstein was running. Now listen to this. This is the part that's new. I kind of heard of this, but I didn't really take a good look at it till yesterday. Okay, this is new for me too. Other investigations have made it increasingly clear that Epstein was running a blackmail operation, and as he bugged the venues, which I'm convinced that he did, whether at his New York mansion or Caribbean island getaway, with microphones and cameras to record the salacious interactions that transpire between his guests and the underage girls that Epstein exploited. Epstein appeared to have stored much of that blackmail in a safe on his private island. Claims of Epstein's links with and his involvement in a sophisticated, well-funded sexual blackmail operation have surprisingly spurred few media outlets to examine the history of intelligence agencies in the U.S. and abroad conducting similar sexual blackmail operations, many of which also involved underage prostitutes. So I'm going to stop right there because I just said a lot. I'm basically throwing out the idea that Epstein wasn't just limited to he just did weird things for celebrities and politicians, that he was actually working as an agent for the Israeli mafia, and he was using the phone camera recordings to basically have some leverage over our political leaders. That's what I am basically saying, okay? So let me just give you the overview, and then we're going to go back into the article because it's very interesting stuff. We're going to go all the way back to the Prohibition for a minute, and then it's going to bring it up to speed. But basically, that's what I'm telling you. I'm telling you that there's a man, Les Wexner, that is purportedly the one who really financed Epstein and set him up to be so, to basically get all this millionaire stuff, you know, this setup for free because they wanted leverage. And apparently there's a big history both with the U.S., Israel, and many other countries where they do this all the time. They get blackmail over the politicians to control. It's really dirty in the weeds. It kind of makes sense to me, to be honest with you, but this is why you see some of this weird stuff. It never really makes complete sense, okay? So going back to the article, let's get into a little more of it just to give you some context. I'm going to show you a video to kind of confirm some of this stuff or not. It's up to you. I don't really know completely how I feel about it, but I just think it's worth talking about and exploring so we can think. Claims of Epstein's links and his involvement in the sophisticated, well-funded sexual blackmail operation have surprisingly spurred few media outlets to examine it because, you know, this is hitting the hornet's nest, and they're not going to go and deal with the real problem, okay? We're going at it. In the U.S. alone, the CIA operated numerous sexual blackmail operations throughout the country, employing, listen to this, prostitutes to target foreign diplomats in what the Washington Post once nicknamed the CIA's love traps. If one goes back even further into the U.S. historical record, it becomes apparent that these tactics and their use against powerful political and influential figures significantly predate the CIA even in its precursor, which was called the Office of Strategic Services, or OSS. In fact, they were pioneered years earlier by none other than the American Mafia. Now watch this. In the course of the investigation, Mint Press discovered that a handful of figures were influential in American organized crime during and after the Prohibition were directly engaged in sexual blackmail operations that they used for their own, often dark purposes. In part one of this exclusive investigation, Mint Press will examine how a mob-linked businessman with deep ties to notorious gangster Meyer Lansky developed close ties with the Federal Bureau of Investigation while also running a sexual blackmail operation for decades, which later became a covert part of the anti-communist crusade of the 1950s led by Senator Joseph McCarthy, himself known throughout Washington for having a habit of drunkenly groping underage teenage girls. Yet it would be one of McCarthy's closest aides who would take over the ring in later years, trafficking minors and expanding their sexual blackmail operation. At the same time, he expanded his own political influence. This put him in close contact with prominent figures, including Reagan and a man would later become President Donald Trump. Now, they make the case on here, and I don't know what to think about it, that they're saying Trump's guilty of some of this stuff too. God only knows. I have a hard time believing that because the one thing Trump did when he was in office and talking, he was constantly like, hey, he kicked out Epstein out of his club. He was making sure that people were asking questions. He said, hey, well, who was on the island? Who's on? Please go check the flight logs. He would constantly say this. Why don't y'all look and see who was on the island? So it's not, I know he was aware of these things, and it seems like if you were guilty, you wouldn't be telling people to search the matter out, if you know what I mean. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But this person, you know, like I said, there could be some true things here and definitely some false things here. But anyway, let's get to it. So in different cities, there was strong evidence that Jeffrey Epstein became one of these people who was used in this blackmail operation, all right? So giving you kind of the nuts and bolts. I'm going to stop right there from the article for a minute, and I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a quick video clip. This is from, this is from Whitney Webb, the same person who I'm getting this article content from. And she has some interviews with people who supposedly had some close ties with Epstein, dealt with him himself, but they're basically going to explain and sum up this dynamic in a way that maybe will be more articulate than what I'm able to do. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Later on, she got involved with Israeli intelligence together with him.
Right.
But not in this honesty in Iran or business.
Would you say she was an agent as well? Was she
Yes,
someone
yes.
working for Israeli intelligence?
Oh, definitely.
Military intelligence as well?
Yes, yes.
And when that happens, because I have no idea how that world works, so I'm learning a little
It
bit.
happened by accident.
Do you get orders and you have to do certain things, or is it more like...
No, you get projects. What really happened, my take on it, and the later thing, is that these guys were seen as agents. And so they found a niche for themselves, blackmailing American and other political figures.
For the Israelis?
Yeah.
So it's hard for people to understand why Israel would want to get blackmail on an American. I'm asking a question that I can answer it quite probably, but for most people it's hard for them to think about Israel as being blackmailing their leaders in the United States. It's a very...
It was quite a thing.
All right, so really interesting, compelling stuff. Maybe there's truth to it. Maybe it's a bunch of baloney. Maybe it's just a weird, quacky conspiracy theory. But guys, there has to be something behind the veil. There has to be more. This Epstein guy, his history, he started off as a math teacher and then somehow got into being this billionaire financer running this pedophilia ring. And what was the reason for that? It makes sense that somebody's got to be backing him. You can't rise from one career to this level just overnight without someone backing you. And I've seen plenty of evidence myself where people are being blackmailed using these tactics to control politicians. I just personally believe that there is some truth to that dynamic. Now, just to kind of sum it on up, I want to go back to the article for a minute. This isn't exactly where I left off, but this is just kind of gives you a little more context. You know that during the Prohibition in the early 1920s and 30s, you know, basically alcohol was outlawed, but then they found out basically outlawing alcohol wasn't a good idea because it gave rise to criminal enterprises and the mob boss. I mean, it went crazy, and it actually did more damage in a lot of ways than it did good. And in the Prohibition era of the United States, it's a really good example as why banning recreational substances only increases their popularity. So there's a particular man I want to point out here who basically started a criminal enterprise, mafia-style enterprise during the Prohibition, and it's stuck in lots of ways through the family lines. His name is Samuel Bronfman. Samuel Bronfman planned to become a major producer of liquor, but true to his family's last name, which means brandy man, he eventually began distributing alcohol and an extension of his hotel family business. So right here, this man, I'm going to show you a quick picture of it. He basically grew throughout the years, and these are his two sons right here. Bronfman, I believe is his name, is a big, kind of like a mobster boss guy who did illegal criminal enterprises and got really, really rich. These are his two sons, and so it says right here, his sons Edgar and Charles. It says right here, key to Bronfman's success during the Prohibition were the ties his family had cultivated with organized crime during Canada's Prohibition. The ties led many prominent members of the mob in the United States to favor Bronfman as a business partner. Bronfman liquor was purchased in massive quantities by many crime lords who still live on American legends, such as Charles Lucky Luciano, Mo DeLintz, Abner Longy Swillman, and Meyer Lansky is the big one. Most of Bronfman's mob associates during the Prohibition were members of what became known as, listen to this, the National Crime Syndicate, which in the 1950s, Senate investigative body known as the Kefauver, Committee, described as a confederation dominated by Italian-American and Jewish-American mobs, which you never hear much about Jewish mobs, but you hear all the time about Italian mobs. Okay. During that investigation, some of the biggest names in the American mafia were named Bronfman as a central figure in their bootlegging operations. The window of notorious American mob boss Meyer Lansky even recounted how Bronfman had thrown lavish dinner parties for her husband. Now listen to this. This is where it kind of points to Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein and what they were doing. Years later, Samuel Bronfman's children and grandchildren, their family ties to the criminal underworld intact, will go on to associate closely with this man, Les Wexner, or Leslie Wexner, who is basically a Jewish mafia man. Allegedly the source of much of Epstein's mysterious wealth that came about kind of overnight over the past 30 years or so, and other mob-linked philanthropists, and some would even manage their own sexual blackmail operations, Epstein, including the recently busted blackmailing-based sex cult in NXIVM. The later generations of the Bronfman family, particularly Samuel Bronfman, sons Edgar and Charles, would be discussed in greater detail. So there's so much wormhole here, and I just wanted to hit the highlights of it, and sorry if that was a bit heavy and a lot of detail that's a little much to take in. The whole point is to pique your interest, get you thinking, and see if you'll search the matter out for yourself. So I have links to this article and a video clip. You can watch the whole thing. I couldn't really show all of it because there's music and copyright stuff that deals with that. But here's the bottom line. If it's true, and it's just something that we need to search out together, I'm not telling you it's true. I don't know if it's true. I think it could be, okay? And so I thought, let's talk about this. Let's get a little deeper here. But it is possible, according to what I'm reading and searching out, that actually you can think of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein more like agents of a government, like the Israeli agents who worked for them on behalf, and they would basically get leverage over American politicians to control them for the interest of the Israeli state or the Israeli mafia. So it's about as much as I can tell you. I'm trying to sum it on up and say in a clear way. What do you guys say? What say you? I mean, right now we got this trial coming out. I highly doubt that this kind of info is going to come out of it, but who knows? We have people coming forward. They're going to be talking mainly about all the egregious stuff. I mean, I think that's clear as mud. Oh, not clear as mud. That's not really clear, is it? I think that's pretty clear, okay? Clear as glass. You know that they were doing horrible, immoral stuff, okay? She is guilty, but I need to get behind the veil. I want to see who are you, how did this thing really work, and who are the big fish, okay? That's what my heart was behind bringing this content to you guys. So anyway, I know it's a bit long. I need to wrap it on up. Remember, if you haven't followed me on Odysee, go ahead and go there and follow me there. If you haven't subscribed on Rumble, please go to Rumble and subscribe to me there. Some things I can talk about here on this platform and some things I cannot. As always, like, subscribe, share, click that notification bell for more content and analysis. If you like what you heard, I have a link to my PayPal, my Cash App. I appreciate the support. It allows me to do what I do and dig and research that much more and bring the news that we need to retain and gain liberty. That's what it's all about. I'll catch y'all on the next one till the wheels fall off, baby. Peace.
It's the Mega Man, and nah, that doesn't stand for hate. We're just saying it's time for education to be great. And if we keep on doing everything that we've been doing, it will no longer be our freedom that we're pursuing. It's now time to teach our students how to think and reason. If we don't, we'll keep on electing those guilty of treason. So listen up as Mega Man is about to spit the truth. Gotta stop the powers that are coming after the youth.